April 10th, 1912, thousands of people stand at the harbor, watching a ship slowly leave the shore. They are not just watching a vessel, they are watching what they believe is the future. The largest passenger ship ever built, a floating palace, a masterpiece of human engineering, the Titanic. At that moment, nobody knows that this ship will soon become one of the most famous disasters in human history. Nobody knows that the name Titanic will one day be connected not with victory, but with tragedy. But what if the biggest mistake was not made on the night the Titanic hit the iceberg? What if the real story began much earlier? What if the Titanic was carrying problems that existed before it ever entered the Atlantic Ocean? Because the question is not only, why did the Titanic sink? The deeper question is, why was the Titanic so vulnerable in the first place? For years, people believed the Titanic was almost impossible to destroy. It was called one of the safest ships ever created. A ship built with advanced technology. A ship designed to survive disasters that would destroy ordinary vessels. But was this confidence justified? Or did people become so impressed by their own creation that they stopped seeing the risks? Because sometimes the most dangerous thing is not a weakness in a machine. Sometimes the most dangerous thing is believing that nothing can go wrong. At the beginning of the 20th century, the world was changing rapidly. Humanity was entering a new age. Machines were becoming more powerful. Cities were growing. New inventions were appearing every year, and the ocean became the next great challenge. For centuries, the sea had been unpredictable. It had taken thousands of ships and countless lives, but now engineers believed they could finally control it. The Titanic was created to prove exactly that. It was not just a ship, it was a message to the world. Human technology has reached a new level. The ship was enormous, nearly 270 meters long. It had luxury unlike anything passengers had ever experienced. Restaurants, libraries, a gym, elegant cabins, even a swimming pool. For first-class passengers, the Titanic was more than transportation. It was a symbol of success, a symbol of wealth, a symbol of a future where humans could achieve anything. But behind all this beauty was a question nobody wanted to ask. Could something this powerful still have a fatal weakness? The Titanic was designed with a system of watertight compartments. The idea seemed brilliant. If the ship was damaged, water would be trapped in certain sections, allowing the vessel to stay afloat. It was one of the reasons people believed the Titanic was incredibly safe. But there was a hidden detail. The compartments were not completely sealed from top to bottom. If too many sections filled with water, it could continue spreading. A small design limitation, a detail that seemed unimportant. But history often changes because of details. And on the Titanic, those details would soon become deadly. But if the Titanic had advanced technology, experienced sailors, and a reputation for safety, what exactly went wrong? And why did the people on board not realize they were sailing toward one of the greatest disasters in history? But if the Titanic had advanced technology, experienced sailors, and a reputation for safety, what exactly went wrong? And why did this magnificent ship sail directly toward one of the greatest disasters in history? The answer begins with a series of decisions. Decisions that seemed reasonable at the time. Decisions that nobody believed would have deadly consequences. Because disasters rarely happen because of one single mistake. They are usually created by many small choices coming together at the worst possible moment. And the Titanic was no different. One of the biggest questions surrounding the disaster is this: why was the Titanic moving so fast through an area where ice had been reported? On April 14th, 1912, several ships sent warnings about ice fields ahead. The messages were clear. Dangerous conditions were waiting in the Atlantic. But the Titanic continued its journey. Why? Was it because the crew trusted the ship too much? Was it because they believed the Titanic could handle almost anything? Or was it simply because nobody imagined that this night would become different from any other? That evening, the ocean looked strangely calm, almost too calm. There were no large waves crashing against the ship, no obvious signs of danger. But this beautiful silence created a hidden problem. The lookouts depended on their ability to see the iceberg before it was too late. And in a dark ocean without waves, spotting a massive iceberg became much harder. Then, at approximately 11:40 p.m., the impossible happened. A warning came from the front of the ship. An iceberg was directly ahead. For a moment, everything changed. The ship that represented human confidence was suddenly facing something it could not control. The crew reacted quickly. The engines changed. The ship began turning, but the distance was too short. The Titanic could not avoid the iceberg completely. The collision was not the dramatic crash many people imagine. The Titanic did not hit the iceberg head on. Instead, the side of the ship scraped against the ice. At first, many passengers did not even understand what had happened. Some barely felt the impact. Some continued talking. Some went back to their rooms, because how could the Titanic be in danger? This was the ship everyone believed was almost impossible to sink. But below the surface, something was already happening. Water was entering the ship. And the question was no longer, can the Titanic survive the damage? The real question became, how long does it have before the ocean takes it? As water continued to enter the Titanic, the reality slowly became impossible to ignore. The ship was sinking, but one of the greatest tragedies was not only the damage caused by the iceberg, it was everything that happened afterward. Because the Titanic was not only defeated by the ocean, it was defeated by a series of decisions made before and during the disaster. One of the biggest questions remains, why were there not enough lifeboats for everyone on board? The Titanic carried more than 2,200 people, but the lifeboats could not hold them all. This was not because there was no space on the ship. It was because regulations at the time did not require enough boats for a vessel of that size. The Titanic was built with confidence in its strength, but not enough preparation for the possibility that it could actually fail. Another tragic detail was that many passengers did not immediately understand the danger. Some refused to leave the ship. Others believed that staying on the Titanic was safer than entering a small lifeboat in the freezing Atlantic. And who could blame them? For days, they had been told they were traveling on the safest ship ever built. How do you convince people to abandon a ship they believe cannot sink? In the early hours of April 15, 1912, the Titanic disappeared beneath the ocean. A ship that represented human achievement became a symbol of human limits. But the mystery of the Titanic has never been only about the iceberg. The iceberg was just one moment. The real story was a chain of choices, a belief that technology could defeat nature, a confidence that turned into vulnerability, small decisions that seemed harmless until they became impossible to undo. More than a century later, the Titanic still rests deep beneath the Atlantic Ocean, and it continues to ask us the same question. Was the Titanic simply unlucky, or was it a disaster waiting to happen? Maybe the Titanic was not doomed because it met an iceberg. Maybe it was doomed because everyone believed it never could.